politics. Informative, educative, and analytical. Getting to the real issues that affect an ordinary individual in areas of leadership, governance, social, and economy. The truth, the lies, and politics.
Good evening and welcome to The Truth, Lies and Politics here on Speed TV. My name is Paul Ekurot, aka, and I'm the show host. And this is a dynamic space where opinions ignite, perspectives are challenged, and we do actually express divergent views on the table. I do welcome you to this wonderful show, and this Wednesday we have a special edition where I actually have the rare opportunity of talking to ladies who are smart but also who will inform opinion on many issues. But today we'll focus on ladies in leadership, women in leadership. Well, you can be a part of this conversation on our socials, that is on X, Facebook, and YouTube, that is at Speed TV UG, and you can leave a comment there. We'll be glad to hear from you. Later on at 9:30, we'll be opening up the phone lines for you to call. We'll be reading you the messages. In a short while, we'll be telling you just what is happening in the week, and I'll be able to introduce the guests. But for now, this is for you.
The Truth, Lies and Politics. On the 8th of March, the world marked International Women's Day, an occasion to reflect on the progress made and the challenges that remain in achieving gender equality. But how far have we really come when it comes to women in politics? While some champion the value and leadership women bring to governance, others urge against their place in political spaces. So what's the truth? Do women truly make a difference in politics, or is their inclusion still up for debate? Tonight, on Truth, Lies and Politics, we take a deep dive into this critical issue with an estimated panel of guests. Join us as we separate fact from fiction and unpack the role of women in shaping political landscapes. Stay informed, stay engaged.
We do welcome you to the show. Already we are having interesting conversations, but in studio with me is a panel of ladies this time, and like I said, the special edition in light of what we celebrated on 8th March, that is the Women's Day celebration. We have the opportunity of hearing from the ladies. I will start from my extreme left, that is Miss Olwen Jacinta, who is an aspiring MP, Tororo North County, and we are glad to have you. Good evening and welcome to the show today.
Good evening and thank you for this show. I implore the listeners and viewers out there to please take keen interest because we have a lot for you in package.
Thank you very much. And next to her is Miss Perry Aritua. I hope I have mentioned it right.
Yes, you have.
I stand to be corrected in case. Who is the Executive Director, Women's Democracy Network. That's the Ugandan chapter, who does a lot, even within the sensitization and civic education and training of those who would like to get into politics, specifically for the ladies and the women. Good evening, Perry, and welcome to The Truth, Lies and Politics.
Good evening, Paul. It's my first time on Spirit FM.
Yes.
I'm happy to be here, especially as we continue to commemorate the month of March, which is the Women's Month, as
Yes.
people call it.
It should be our entire lives, because
yes.
really we shouldn't restrict these things to only.
True, but during this time we amplify
Yes.
the issues, the gains, the deficits, the trends, so that
Yes.
people pay attention to where we need to accelerate action.
Absolutely.
Yes, so I'm
Thank
glad
you.
to be here.
All right, thank you very much. And right on my immediate left is Ms. Judith Atim, who is the head of Program Center for Constitutional Governance, but also in the same media space as myself, hashtag no pressure for me. because usually she's the one who is interviewing the guests. I am happy to have you. Welcome to The Truth Lies and Politics and Speed TV this evening.
Thank you very much, Paul. It is indeed a pleasure and a great honor for me to be here on Spirit FM and Spirit TV. It's also wonderful to meet my lovely colleagues here, Perry and my sister Jacinta. It is really a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to having a robust and engaging conversation this evening.
Thank you very much. Well, as we do continue to whet your appetites on the conversation, usually we do highlight a few stories that are happening within the country. And for the past week, we had the UPDF or the SFC being deployed in South Sudan, and General Mohozi made a comment on that. We also had several other issues pertinent is what is going to happen tomorrow in the Kawempe North elections. We've had quite interesting by-elections, but if you've been putting ear to the ground, you notice that it is a trend that has been happening for quite some time in this country. Also, we did celebrate the Women's Day, on 8th March, together with the president. And there's a clip that has been making lots of rounds in the city. One of the ladies who was given an opportunity to speak, actually, I should say, rattled feathers on the day. I will start with Perry. And just take your thoughts on the Women's Day celebrations and what the highlight was.
I mean, for me, Women's Day is usually a day for us to amplify our voices on the issues that continue to affect women's rights and equal opportunity. We look at the gaps in education between boys and girls. We look at health. In terms of access, affordability, what's the difference between women and men, boys and girls. We look at economy and several factors. And it's very important because it also helps our governments, which are supposed to be key in terms of accelerating our development, to understand where the issues are.
Yes.
And it's celebrated world over. So it's not only Uganda which celebrates Women's Day. So for me, the highlights usually are the gains, to see what we have been able to achieve. For this country, we see more women in the public space, which is positive, because I'm a firm believer in that the best advocate is the one who speaks for her or himself. So if you're not on the decision-making table, you may miss out on an opportunity to say what you are feeling and what you are seeing. So it's really usually an opportunity for us to do that. And so Women's Day, of course, we saw the clip which you mentioned, which was going around. I think it's critical for us to speak the truth.
Yes. Because
that is the only way we can develop, not only as a person, but as a country. So the woman who trended during the celebrations, I think, spoke from what she was observing and maybe her experiences. The thing is, at times leaders are shielded away from facts. And because of that, then they are not able to make the right interventions. So at times it's critical to hear from the ordinary person, the ordinary Ugandan, not the one who, at times is driving a car which doesn't fill the potholes. The one who, when she is sick, is flown out of this country. But to feel the real user of these services, the taxpayer who is supposed to be benefiting from programs like PDM. So for me, I was glad she spoke out, and it is testament that women are increasingly using their voices to speak their truth. It's critical in terms of how development trends continue in a country like ours. So and then of course, apart from that, I don't know whether I should speak about the by-elections. Maybe let me give my friends an opportunity also.
We do have somebody who's vying for the Tororo North County seat. I think I'll start from there, then we shall get into the to Judith Atim. So your thoughts on the Kawempe North elections, what has happened before, but then also what you think tomorrow will look like.
Thank you very much, especially for this program. A lot has been said, a lot has happened, There's a lot of dilemma. There are so many assumptions of the possible outcomes of the by-elections in Kawempe. One thing that made me really feel complete was seeing the faces of bold women who are standing in that space, the most hard-hit space. It really made me feel like, as an upcoming leader, that this government has given us the opportunity as women to take up the leadership spaces, which traditionally were kept away from us because of the dictates of cultural values and norms that hindered us from opening up and knowing who we are, our potential as a whole, and to exercise our rights as women as embedded in the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. So women's role basically and in taking up leadership spaces is really key for the development of this country, and I want to encourage the ladies out there who are in this race that you can do it. Keep the fire burning, keep the hopes high. You can do it. What a man can do, a woman could even do better 100 times. I should not limit it to 100 because we are more capable. Women are managers, women are leaders, women are teachers. Honestly speaking, I would be underrating the role of a woman in leadership. Big ups to government of Uganda for giving us the space and the opportunity to voice out our potential and to exercise our abilities towards ensuring the socio-economic development of this country. Uganda will not achieve the Millennium Development Goals, the sustainable goals that we have set up for 2030 without the role of women in leadership. So my only appeal is that we maintain peaceful campaigns, that we maintain peaceful voting day, and respect the virtues of a woman as embedded in the Bible and in the leadership space. Women are mothers, they deserve respect, they deserve protection, and they deserve to be given that stepping platform to thrive to their full potential.
All right, thank you for that. I do get to Judith Atim. Yes, your thoughts on the Kawempe North by-elections.
Thank you, Paul. And I want to say I do associate myself to the views that have been submitted by my two wonderful colleagues. Having said that, I think we need to also give credit to our country, that over the last few decades, 2 or 3 decades, we've also seen a tremendous growth in the women's movement. We've seen women grow to take on positions of leadership. Today we have a vice president who is a woman, we have a prime minister who is a woman, we have a speaker of parliament who is a woman, we have so many women in ministerial positions, that's in politics. We have so many women who are members of parliament, contributing, of course, to policy formulation.
Yes.
When you come to the civil society space, we have a lot of women. My wonderful colleague Perry is here. We have the Dr. Sarah Beretes of CCJ, who is my boss. We have so many. We have women in media who are scaling heights and doing so much more. We have women aspiring for political positions, just like Jacinta here. But having said that, I think what saddens me and what should sadden a lot of Ugandans is the kind of brutality that we see women subjected to in the Kawempe North by-elections that we've been seeing over the last few weeks. Women are being brutalized. Women are subjected to all kinds of abuse. And the message that this sends to other women out there, what is the message that they're actually receiving when they see their colleagues who are participating actively in politics, exercising their civic rights, go through this? The message is this is a dangerous platform. It's a dangerous space. You're a woman, do not participate. So whether you're going to participate as a politician, whether you're going to participate as an agent for a politician, or a woman belonging to a political party, or even a woman who is going to just participate as a voter, certainly the space is so volatile, it is so brutal that it definitely threatens the woman and keeps her out of politics, locks her out of participating and exercising her civic duty. And this is a threat that I think we need to confront, not just here in this space or in this conversation we're having, but as a country.
Yes.
Because a progressive society cannot still be held back by these kinds of threats and challenges that we see. This doesn't speak well for democracy, it doesn't speak well for civilization.
Yes, and this is a trend that has continued over over quite a number of years. When I think about the previous elections, I look at the violence and how you've already mentioned a few issues there, but I think we can continue in that angle. The violence meted against the women in politics. What else does what else do you have to say along those lines, Perry?
Thank you, Paul. Violence comes in different forms. It can be physical, like what we have been seeing in the media and during the Kawempe North by-elections, but also in previous elections. It can also be economic, where you're denied access to resources, and yet we know that every candidate will need money for nomination. If you're standing as a member of parliament, you need about 3 million. There are different amounts of money for nomination for different levels of leadership. You'll need money to travel, to transport yourself, to make posters, go on some of the shows which are not funded. For instance, this one where it is you who has invited us. So you need some amount of resources. Now, economic violence can prevent women from contesting for elections, because then you don't have access to resources. While for more men, they have access to land. They have access to property, so you find it is easier for them to make a decision to run for an election because they have that resource. While for a woman, she may need to ask for permission, to get some resources for some. Of course, there has been an improvement, I must say.
Yes.
If you look at the numbers of women who now own who own land, the last statistics by the National Development Plan 3, I think, showed the numbers had risen to about 30% of women who actually own registered land. I don't know whether that has changed over the last years.
Which is
then
a positive
there's also
thing.
It is positive.
Yes.
Then there's also sexual violence.
Yes.
It's something that is not spoken about, but as an organization, we have done a study on how sexual violence affects women's participation in politics.
That is within politics.
Within politics. And at times it is even as simple as accessing the party card. Where you're told you have to meet so and so, I don't know, in
a special.
And I'm like, for crying out loud, this person wants to serve. Because for me, that's how I understand leadership, that you're offering yourself so that you can serve that particular constituency.
Yes.
So they are subjected to so many things. In one time we were training in Masakan, the women were saying they call it value-added tax.
That is the sexual violence.
They have even created names for it. It's
unfortunate.
Yes, it's one of the most horrendous forms of violence which most women fear to speak about, and for younger women it's even worse. Now, I must also add that there is also what you call emotional violence, where they are called names, you are bullied. There's the cyberbullying,
just
which is online.
But that happens on men too.
It does happen to men, but when you look at the magnitude, for the women it is more, and for the younger women it is even more brutal. Because that is a way of saying you're coming into a space which is not yours. Because remember, traditionally politics is a male space. So it's like some people within the political arena, some members of society still think you are an intruder. So they will use every means to keep you out of politics. So those are the different forms of violence that women experience, and it actually does keep them out. But what I'm proud to say that over the years, women have become more resilient.
Yes.
But we should not be resilient to violence. the thing is we must address it.
Yes,
you know, I know that there are a number of political parties which have adopted policies against sexual harassment.
Yes.
And for me, this election is a test case to see whether they will implement those policies, because within the policies there is the whole candidate selection process, which has been a subject of sexual violence.
Yes.
We are hoping that through their implementation of those policies, we'll see a reduction in those other forms of violence.
Right.
But I just also wanted to add, in terms of the Kawempe North by-election, that for every leader, your legitimacy actually lies in the people. So if an election is a subject of violence, your legitimacy becomes questionable.
It's based on violence.
And for me, we have a huge youth demographic. The
Yes.
youth have actually been the major victims of election violence. And I think it is a conversation all Ugandans must be concerned about, because you have a population which is not going to back down. This young population wants to participate.
Yes.
It is incumbent upon every decision maker in this country to discuss this issue seriously and have solutions. You know, this business of saying there's violence, no. So what are you going to do? If, for instance, you're having masked people, first of all, as a military or security officer, why are you wearing a mask? Ideally, you must be identifiable so that you're held culpable if you cross the line.
Yes.
Because the laws are clear in terms of the role of security in an election.
It is actually the
clear.
Electoral Commission that is in charge of all.
Exactly. And
Yes.
then they usually give the police
Yes.
the authority to ensure that the places are secure. And by the way, within our laws, even polling stations are not supposed to have anyone holding a gun. That's why within the law, you can be an election day constable. Most times they don't even have anything. They're just there to ensure that the process is peaceful.
Orderly, yes.
So for me, the element of guns in election is a phenomenon which we must address, because elections by nature are supposed to be a civil affair. They are not supposed to be a military affair. And you see, for us who have had an opportunity to observe elections in other countries,
Yes.
you come back and you're like, what are we
Sure.
doing? You go to Ghana, and Ghana has an election, and the world moves on.
Yes.
Because they know that this is just a process of getting our leaders into power. And the leaders also know that their legitimacy lies in having a free and fair election.
So, Perry, I know I'm going to get to Jacinta. Where did it go wrong? Where did we as a country go wrong? I know we're still talking about the violence and all of these things, that because now it is looks normal to see armed men and women, you know, on the polling station or polling day. We expect to see all these vehicles and things like that. And I'll ask Jacinta, is it possible for us to have a peaceful, you know, election? But that will be after you let us know where it went wrong.
I think where we went wrong was when those who, first of all, just mixing this whole security apparatus, getting the military and the police involved, yet this is supposed to be the police maintaining law and order, and then not knowing where do the orders come from. This business of saying orders from above, who is the one who is giving these orders? And for me, this is where you challenge those who have authority over these different security agents. If someone is clearly infringing the law, why aren't they penalized? Because we have a Human Rights Enforcement Act, which says that if you are held culpable, you will bear the consequences
as an individual.
Now, when you have impunity, impunity is where you do things and nothing is done to you. It thrives. And that's why we must start holding people accountable. That, for instance, if you are deployed, because at times the police will tell you, look, we are very few, we have got to get others to help us. But those people must still be under the police.
Yes.
That is my interpretation of the law, you know, that they should still be under the police, and that means their behavior must reflect what a police officer would have done. So that means that, one, you will be identifiable. Because once you start wearing a mask, what are you hiding? That for me is the question. Two, that you will behave in a manner that carries Uganda's, you know, and that's the thing we forget, that as a country, our image at times is spoiled by some of these things. That wherever you go, and because we have social media, any post, they say, look at this country. You chase away investors, it has other effects. At times we look at it as, oh, just elections, but no.
This is just simply Kawempe North. There's nothing much.
People who invest in countries make decisions based on security, based on our behavior. So if they see people getting away with things that they should not be getting away with, then they're wondering, maybe I should invest in Ghana, where people are civilized, that they hold an election and leaders come, they are held accountable, another one comes, and life moves on. So for me, it is really time for us to think bigger than just this election.
What is happening?
What are the implications for this country when we don't manage behavior of errant individuals within different apparatus, even within the civilians?
Yes.
It's important that as civilians, we act.
These days as civilians, we also don't know who is the real civilian or who is the real civilian. But I will get to Jacinta on that. Allow me just say, Honorable, maybe in a prophetic way, but...
I receive.
Yes. Is it possible for us to have a peaceful election, considering the past that we have had? And I know that we should be a progressive country. Is it possible?
I must say affirmatively that yes, it is possible to have peaceful transition. It's possible to hold peaceful elections, whether by-elections or whatsoever form it comes, whether at the local levels or at the national levels. It is possible to hold peaceful elections, because it's about an issue of people opening up to accepting that each one of us has a role to play towards building that peaceful environment.
Yes.
Right from the grassroots level all through to the national level and beyond the borders, definitely. I believe that the intentions could be good in deployment during election processes.
Right.
But to a greater extent, when you look at the actions of the different sects of security personnel deployed, I believe there's a lot of mismanagement that's going on, which can be reversed for the betterment of this nation.
Yes.
The people in charge, those with authority like my senior colleague has just mentioned, should take up the mandate and review their obligations.
Yes.
To what extent are they supposed to exercise violence? Under what circumstances should violence be exercised? Should it be exercised anyway? I don't think so. It is not called for.
To them, it could be minimal force, but that minimal force to a citizen is different.
And you find that even when the environment is friendly, at times the mismanagement of the process incites violence in itself, which can be avoided. This country is a very lovely country, and we have a lot that we can do peacefully, especially in the political space.
Right.
We want elections to be carried out. We should give that enabling environment for all participants. We should give equal opportunity. We should give equal level of protection to allow for fairness and for a more reliable outcome of the results.
Wow.
Women, I for one, got intimidated right from the start when I said it is time that Jacinta comes up and takes up her ambition to the next level.
Intimidated by who?
The intimidation comes right from down because of fears that people have. Especially at family level, you'll find the cultural norms that keep women in the kitchen, dictating where the women should be. So some would tell me, but you're just a woman. How are you going to handle with these men?
Yes.
So it means that the perception down there about women participation in politics is still being wrapped up by cultural ties. These norms that discourage people from grooming their daughters into responsible leaders, And yet by nature, we were created leaders. We make up families. A family is not a family if there is no woman. We are the managers. We are the people who bring up the generations. We nurture them in a similar way. Whatever surrounds us socially, economically, politically, and otherwise, women have a role that they play indirectly, which influences decisions that are taken in this country.
Yes.
And based on that, I would think that we still have a lot of mindset change issues at the grassroots level to empower our local communities to learn to appreciate that women have a big role to play, and that these spaces are open and they can do their best to groom and uplift fellow women as well into taking up effectively their leadership spaces and allowing them to perform and to thrive in the spaces. So I want to again, once again, congratulate my sisters in Kawempe for taking up that bold decision amidst all the struggles. You know how Kampala area is. It is a mix of diverse populations. And that region in particular, you have to be a strong woman and let them not give up. They can do it. They can do it. My only a humble request is that they tread carefully. They shouldn't be the inflictors of that violence because it will directly affect them first before they even extend to the women. Women are generally vulnerable, and because they are vulnerable, the fear we have, we really need to do a little more to be able to succeed in our ambitions. We can be better leaders than any other sect in this country.
Okay, I think that Judith, you had something to add to that.
Yeah, sure. Sure, and I want to just contribute a little bit to where Jacinta is coming from. You asked a question that is it possible to have peaceful, free and fair elections? And she ably answered that. But when she was submitting, I was asking myself, and I think it's also something that is important for us to reflect on, who benefits from violence, okay? Because you need to first of all understand who is the architect of violence in this country, and especially in the context of elections in Uganda.
Yes.
Who has the tools or the powers to inflict violence? Certainly it's not the civilian, okay? So you have to also address those power issues. Are the people in charge of security doing what they're supposed to do? Are they overstepping their mandate? And if they're overstepping their mandate, in whose interest are they working? You understand? So if we cannot address that question, that is the elephant in the room that I think we need to confront, okay? Because it is through addressing that we will have sanity in our politics, okay? For as long as that question is not thoroughly addressed, we're going to continue having this cycle of violence that characterizes our politics. You asked Perry also a question, I think I've forgotten. At what point did it go wrong?
Yes.
Again, I was asking myself, when we went into a multi-party dispensation, were we ready for that as a country? Was there goodwill? Was there political will to actually embrace an open space? Or were we simply putting on a performance for the rest of the world to actually look at us as a democratic country, yet in practice we are not. We've not embraced the true spirit of democracy and multipartism.
Yes.
Okay? But because I want to believe that if there was genuine goodwill and political will, that the leaders of this country at that time understood why democracy is important for a country like Uganda, we wouldn't be seeing the problems that we are seeing. We wouldn't be regressing. This, to me, is a manifestation that there was no goodwill at all to embrace multipartism from the word go. And we need to rethink as a country. Again, who benefits from a system like this?
Yes.
I think the answer is very clear for all to see.
How then do we deal with these issues? Because then from your from your part if it spirals all to this particular people or say or institution that benefits. How then do we, because there's a possibility of us just giving up and saying we can't do anything.
So to respond to that, Paul, the beauty with Uganda is we have such a beautiful constitution. You understand? Yeah. And you cannot take away the provisions of that constitution, okay? And also, just from what I've said, yes, there could be spheres of influence or individuals that do not believe in multipartyism or democracy. But from the 2 decades or so that we've opened up the space, we see that the people actually want this. Yeah. And the will of the people must prevail, okay? We cannot simply throw our hands up in the air and say, well, because there's some people who are trying to make these spaces complicated or difficult for Ugandans to participate in, therefore we must give up. No, the will of the people must and shall prevail. That's my strong belief.
Right. I like that. Interesting, talking about the will of of the citizens, and I'm hoping that we don't shy away from these issues and actually actively participate in voicing out our concerns. I would like to take us into there was a writing that was done in 2024 May, and it is about the conversation, and as part of this, the electoral gender quota system in Uganda, first introduced in 1989, led to the increase of women's numbers in Uganda's parliament. Today it stands at about 34%, about. Right, and that means there are about 189 women in parliament. I'm just looking at parliament, but there are other roles, and after about 557 members of parliament. And so when you think about something like this, actually to add to that, Uganda is one of the very first countries who that had a female speaker of parliament, who served in that position from about up to 2020, up to 2011. You also had Uganda having the very first vice president, Speciosa Wandira Kazibwe, from 1994 to 2003. And this caused, it was something different, it was something new, but there are countries that seem to have surpassed, us in having women elected or women in politics highlighted. So are you, where we stand today as a country, are you grateful, satisfied, or you think there should be more? We ought to do a lot more in having the women in leadership, and what has to be done in that sense? I will go to Perry on that one. And then you can chip in.
Sure.
Yes.
Thank you, Paul. I just also wanted to again reemphasize a study that was done by the Afrobarometer in 2024.
Yes.
Which actually showed that 62% of Ugandans want democracy. So that tells you people actually want to elect their leaders. They want their leaders to be accountable. They want to have a say in their governance.
In line with that, before we get to the next story, do Ugandans understand what democracy is?
I think they do understand facets of democracy, because democracy is not only elections.
Because I think that is what is, when you go, when they say Turiko ground, we are on ground.
No, that's just one.
Yes.
Because even after the election, there are certain attributes that democracy will have, that people will be participating through their representatives, and that's why having effective representatives is important, because they remain your voice in the different positions of leadership that they occupy, and that the leaders will be accountable, because remember, the taxpayer here is still the citizen. So you being in parliament to appropriate resources, you are appropriating these resources on behalf of the citizen who gave you the authority to be in that house in the first place. And that goes for the different levels of leadership at local council and these other levels. So it's just that I think we need to do more civic engagement and awareness on what this package entails. And it's interesting that world over, even when democracy has deficiencies, most citizens still prefer to have a say in the way they are governed. Because if I am paying taxes, I expect services. So my contract with you, which I call a social contract, is that I will give you my authority, but you will in turn ensure that you appropriate my taxes to ensure my life becomes better. So those are the other facets that we don't talk about, that I'll be allowed to speak, and that I'll be able to air my views. And you see, what is key for democracy is that you must tolerate my opinion. I may not agree with Judith all the time, but I am not going to slap Judith for her opinion. Because as human beings, even twins don't think the same. They think differently. So my role as a person is to continue to encourage others to even speak. Because, and you see, I like what President Obama once said. He was speaking about their democracy. And he said, look, it's always critical to hear what my opponent is saying, because the solution to my problem may come from my opponent.
That is very true. That is very true. Yes.
Instead of dismissing what the person is saying, the person who may not belong to your party, you're picking ideas, and in the end you will shine, because people even think the ideas came from you. Or they'll say, look, he or she has now implemented the ideas. So it's critical for us to continue to understand this, but also for us to model what a true democracy looks like, not only at the level of our public leadership, but even in our schools, right from the primary schools, when these leaders are being chosen as prefects. What the things that they are saying, what will they do when they come into leadership, and to ensure that they know you will be held accountable for those promises.
I was, let me just take you on that one. I was at, I visited the school. I do some work with the high schools, plus also primary schools, and this season is actually a season where they're electing prefects, and I think one of those roles was on public speaking and, you know, just engaging the students. And it's very different from where we came from, which I totally understand. There are posters everywhere, there are all of these things, and a student comes up and says, when you elect me, I will take away PrEP.
Imagine.
I was thinking,
now you see,
this is a reflection of
now that the student must also understand their policies in these schools. You don't just come and take away what the policy says. If it's not a policy that is working, how do you engage and review? You know, so those are processes we must start at a young age. And you see, for some of us who have been able to see how democracies work in areas where they are more developed, you see these young children being introduced to these concepts at an early age.
So civic education is done at primary junior level. I think when we were growing up, we experienced some of this civic education.
Exactly. So you find you grow up knowing that there are certain values that you must have, that freedom of expression is important, because the views of different people is what helps leaders to perform. Because if you're the only one speaking, how will you know what your people are thinking? You know? So your vision must be informed by the different people whom you lead, so that at the end of the day, they own the decisions. And that's why I always say leaders must ensure that they're legitimate. Because you see, you need those people to implement your vision. Now, if people are saying you came through an election which was not free and fair, there are those who will not want to work with you, because they feel you didn't earn the authority. So it's a discussion that we must have. Part of the reason why we are not developing is because some leaders have lost their legitimacy. They bribe their way to power, they use violence. So the citizen is feeling like, I didn't give this person my authority. So even when you're saying, look, let us try and keep our environment clean, we are going to have Bulungi Bwansi, they're asking us who? You are telling me as who? I didn't even give you my power. You beat me to ensure that you win. You rigged. You predict ballots. So you don't have legitimacy. So development
so I treat you that way.
I will treat you with disdain.
Unfortunate.
So that for me is a deeper conversation that we must have. We keep saying, why do Ugandans behave like this? Maybe it is a reflection of the failures in our whole process of election. That I like that. No, I cannot. Who are you? Because leaders thrive on influence.
Yes.
Now,
yes.
if you can't influence people because you go through the process illegitimately, how are you going to deliver?
Wow, that's an interesting perspective, because then you actually look at different places in our country or in our city, and that is just how our citizens behave. It's like, I don't believe you went through the right way, so I'll treat you that way, which is very unfortunate. And yet when we talk about politics, we're looking at managing societies and communities. Quite deep. I know that you are listening. I know that you're listening. In case you'd like to be a part of this conversation, do send your comment or your question on our socials. That is on Spirit TV UG on X, Facebook, and YouTube. We'll be glad to hear from you. We're also streaming live. You can let your comment there. So I'd asked a question. Inadvertently, it is one where we've had an increase of women in political spaces.
Yes.
And are you happy where we're at?
No.
Can more be done? Judith, take it on.
So your stats, the
Yes.
stats you're quoting says 189 women.
Yes, that was 2024.
Remove 146 who are on the affirmative action ticket, okay? What do you
Remove
remain?
146.
These are women members of parliament,
Okay.
okay? Remove that number. Then you have the special interest groups.
Yes.
Okay, you have one woman at the national youth level. Okay, you have another special interest group, PWDs. How many
Yes,
do we have
PWDs.
there? One or two. You have workers.
Yes, workers, MPs.
Most of those are five.
Yeah, five. But how many women? How many women are among PWDs?
You must have about one.
So you have one. So you
representative
come to the workers, you probably have one or two.
Yes.
So do the math.
Whoa, that's very small.
Exactly.
Very small
And then,
number.
so you're looking at 146. But also, just look at Kampala alone. Okay? You have one woman representing the whole of Kampala, which has 5 divisions. Okay? The population in Kawempe North, we are told, is about 190,000. Our census statistics tells us 51% of our population is made of women. 190,000, 51% of that population would be what? That's more than half of the population in Kawempe North is made of women. Okay? But you're not seeing that there's another woman representing Kawempe North, Rubaga Division. No. There's one woman to represent and articulate the issues of all the women in Kampala. And one woman to represent and articulate the issues of all women in each of the 146 districts. That is certainly not fair. Where's the fairness there?
That actually in the constitution, these women don't only represent women, they are members of parliament. So meaning they are going to
both
do
voices.
Yes. Exactly. So is that adequate? How can we be happy and satisfied with that? And when our sister here, Jacinta, goes to contest, you're running in on the mainstream ticket.
Directly elected, yes.
Already, just hear her stories right from your family, your relatives, your in-laws. That pressure, just how many hurdles does a woman have to jump to just prove to the world that she is good enough, that she is worthy, that she deserves it, that she can actually do as good as a man? How many? Okay, so when you begin to look at all the barriers that a woman has to jump compared to the barriers that a man has to jump, certainly the world is not tilted in a woman's favor, really. And that is why when you ask the question, should women be excluded from or empowered in politics, what were you even thinking? What were you even thinking to come up with such a topic?
Yes.
You already see that the woman just has just one barrier, one hurdle after another for the woman. All we are saying is we need more spaces. Okay, when we have people like her, ladies like her, going into the mainstream to contest with the men, let's create environments that enable them to thrive and succeed, other than creating obstacles and barriers for them. Because already, like we are saying, the 146 we have cannot sufficiently do the work they're supposed to do. So let's support women like her who are going into these mainstream spaces, the predominantly male-dominated spaces. Let's have more women. If we had 100 more women on those platforms, I think we would actually have very good, fairly good representation. So where I sit, I cannot say we are actually satisfied that this is enough.
This is
okay?
where,
I also understand that there are questions over the years that, okay, now that women are so empowered, why are we still seeing challenges? And I think when we had the Mabati scandal, there was a lot of conversation about, oh, you know, women are now letting Ugandans down and so on. But again, not to say we defend or sanitize bad things that certain women engage in. We need to call out any leader, any public office holder who engages in irregular acts like corruption and so on. It is simply abhorrent. We do not celebrate that. Having said that, let us also hold the men to the same level of scrutiny that we hold the women.
Yes.
You understand?
Yeah.
This is just fair play, okay? If taxpayers' money is misappropriated, let's not heap the blame solely on the women. The same yardstick with which we measure the woman's performance should be the same yardstick with which we measure the man's performance.
Very unfortunate what happens there, but I like the sobering statistics that you've given, and I know we'll have to dig a little bit more into that. Actually, we're having a conversation with Perry just before I get to Jacinta about the affirmative action, and in a way it is yes, I think I'll just let you speak into it. What happens when you know, when that is taken away? You know.
Oh, because the last statistics, I don't know if there were like 14 who were on the open seat. I don't know if that number has increased.
Directly elected seats, yes.
Yes,
No.
those are the open seats, the constituency seats.
Yes.
And Judith ably really comments on the barriers
Yes.
that these women face. Because within the political party, the party is saying, look, who is more able to win? You see, because they're looking at winning.
Yes.
So if you're going to be able to win the woman's seat,
they say that is yours.
Even if you wanted an open seat, they're going to say, no, we have to win. So let's give this ticket to a man. You stay on the seat where you're going to win. So there are those dynamics. And then Jacinta already, Judith already said there are also a number of hurdles, family level. Society is telling you, you have your seat, you have the women's seat.
We have you catered, right? So it is a ring-fenced area for.
And that's why the Electoral Commission's voter education really needs to deal with this issue. You know, for the communities to understand this is an open seat. The affirmative action seat was made for certain reasons. It was supposed to deal with the traditions and norms that had kept women out of politics. So the open seat is a seat for everyone. Whether you're disabled, female, male, you can contest on that seat.
Just a question on that. Is it only the Electoral Commission's role to do the civic education? Because I think it can be cascaded to other institutions, right from school.
Constitutionally, that's their mandate.
That's their mandate.
The voter education
it is their
mandate.
duty.
Yes.
So anyone who comes in complements them.
But then that is limiting.
And that's the thing, and that's why they must hasten their accreditation. You know that many of the NGOs that applied for voter education have not yet even been accredited. Yeah. So they need the NGOs.
Maybe they feel you're taking their role.
No, we're actually helping them to do their work. Yeah. You know. Now, you asked about the whole thing about the affirmative action. And one of the things I must point out is
can I just hold you on right there? Sure. And we'll continue with Perry and then Jacinta on that. We're going to take a short break and we will be back with this conversation. It's getting more interesting, and there are other sobering statistics and sobering things that we need to address. This is more of an informative but also changing perspectives. Why not? This is Spirit TV, and we will be back right after these messages.
truth, the lies, and politics. Informative, educative, and analytical. Getting to the real issues that affect an ordinary individual in areas of leadership, governance, social, and economy. The truth, the lies, and politics